Okay, ready to dive in. Today's topic is pretty fascinating, actually. We're talking about depression, cognitive distortion.
Which, to put it simply, is how our thoughts can kind of get a little twisted,
Yeah.
especially when we're feeling down.
Oh, yeah. Like looking
Yeah.
at everything through a really negative filter. I think we've all been there.
Exactly. And it's more common than you think. The thing is, it's not just about feeling sad. It's about those specific thought patterns that, well, they kind of pop up and color everything.
So, like, instead of just feeling down, we start distorting reality.
Yeah, yeah. Like imagine your boss seems distracted in a meeting. Someone without cognitive distortion might just think, oh, he's just having a busy day. But distortion, that makes you jump to, he hated my presentation, I'm getting fired, it's over.
Oh, man. And I feel like we've all had those moments, right?
Right, and it can get pretty intense.
Mm.
One of the sources I was looking at even had this example of a woman. She was getting praise at work, everything was going great, but then there was this one comment from her boss, totally neutral, nothing bad at all, but she fixated on it, convinced it meant she was about to get fired.
Wow. See, that's what I mean about our brains being our own worst enemy sometimes.
Totally. And the thing is, these distortions, they don't just stay in our heads, they impact our relationships, our work, everything.
Okay, so this isn't just some abstract psychobabble.
hmm
Twisted thinking has real-world consequences.
hmm
So how does that actually play out? Like in my relationships, for example.
Let's say, hypothetically, your partner's been a little quiet, maybe a bit withdrawn. Cognitive distortion might make you instantly assume, oh, they're mad at me. Or worse, this relationship is over. And then you start acting on those assumptions.
Ouch. Yeah, I can see how that would not end well. And what about at work? Like, are these thought patterns going to help me get that promotion, you think?
Probably not. Imagine you're constantly second-guessing every idea you have, convinced everything you do is terrible, or, any criticism, even if it's constructive, you take it as a personal attack. Not exactly a recipe for success.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Okay, so where does all this come from? Is it all in our heads, or are there like other things at play here?
Yeah. Well, that's what's so interesting. You see, it's not just one thing. It's this combination of factors, almost like a perfect storm. Biology plays a huge part. Our genes, our brain chemistry, even things like hormones. And it's not even just biology, right? Like our environment, that plays a huge role too. Think about it. Chronic stress, that can really mess with your thinking, make those negative thought patterns even worse.
Right, right. And I'm guessing our past experiences, like what we've been through, that probably factors in too.
Exactly. Think about it. Those experiences, especially early in life, they kind of shape how we see the world, how our brains react to things.
That makes sense. So, okay, it feels like we're kind of stuck then, right? Like if it's biology, environment, past experiences, how do we actually change the way we think?
Well, that's the good news. There are definitely things we can do. A lot of your sources talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. It's like really powerful for rewiring those thought patterns.
CBT, yeah, I've heard of that. I always thought it was something you had to do with a therapist, though, right?
You can, definitely.
Oh.
But one of your sources, actually, it talked about how effective self-guided CBT can be, too. Like using workbooks. There are even apps for it now.
Speaking of apps, one of the sources I was looking at mentioned this app, Care Clinic. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah. It's like a whole toolkit for your mind right on your phone. Mood tracking, reminders for healthy habits. You can even connect with support networks if you need to. Pretty cool stuff.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so we've got CBT, which you can do with someone or on your own. But what about those moments where, like, you're right there in it, the distortion hits you? What do we do in the moment?
That's where mindfulness comes in. I know,
Hmm.
it's become a bit of a buzzword, but it really can help. The key is you're learning to just notice your thoughts without judgment, like you're hitting pause on that automatic negative reaction.
So instead of getting swept up in that thought, my boss hates me,
Yeah.
you're just like acknowledging it. Okay, there's that thought.
Yes, exactly. And once you've got that little bit of space, you can start to examine the thought. Like, okay, is there any actual evidence to support this? Or am I just, catastrophizing?
It's like hitting the fact check button on your own brain.
Yeah. Right. And that's where understanding those different cognitive distortions can be super helpful. One of your sources, it actually lists out a bunch of common ones, like mental filtering. That's where you're only focusing on the negative, completely ignoring the positive.
Ooh, yeah, I do that one a lot.
We all do. Or there's personalization, where you blame yourself for things that, honestly, you have zero control over. The point is, once you can recognize these patterns, you can start interrupting them, choosing a more balanced way of looking at things.
It's a process then. It's not like we can just flip a switch and boom, no more distortions.
Exactly. It takes time, it takes practice. But the more you work at it, the stronger those mental muscles get?
So we're spotting those distorted thoughts, challenging them, reframing them. But in the meantime, like, while we're working on all that, they're still impacting us, right?
Hmm.
Our decisions, how we interact with people. So it's like we're trying to rewire our brains, but in the meantime, those old thought patterns,
Mm.
they're still like running the show. Kind of a scary thought when you put it like that.
It is, but it's also like incredibly empowering, don't you think? Once you see that link between what
Yeah.
you think and what you do, you realize, hey, I can actually change this. Like, let's say you're always assuming the worst case scenario is going to happen.
Well, that's me, 100%.
Yeah.
Mr. Doom and Gloom over here.
Okay, so that kind of thinking might make you avoid taking chances. You miss out on opportunities, maybe even sabotage yourself without realizing it. Or, in a relationship, if you're always filtering out the good stuff, focusing on the negative, you miss all those great things your partner does. And then that just creates more problems. Our thoughts, even the messed up ones, they can become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, that's a lot to process. Honestly, I'm kind of feeling a little overwhelmed here. What about someone listening who's like, okay, I get it, this all makes sense, but where do I even start? With one thing, just one thing they can try, like today, to start untwisting those thoughts.
You know what? That is such a good question. And it doesn't have to be complicated, one of the simplest things, but so powerful. Keep a thought journal. Just jot down those thoughts when they pop up. The negative ones, the distorted ones. Don't judge, just observe and write.
So it's like, ugh, my presentation bombed. Everyone must think I'm incompetent. That kind of.
Write it down. And then, right next to it, challenge it. Is there actually any proof that it bombed? That everyone thought that? Or are you jumping to conclusions? Maybe it wasn't perfect, but did it really be? See if you can come up with some other ways to look at it, something more realistic.
So we become like thought detectives, looking for evidence, finding other explanations.
Oh.
I love that.
Okay.
And hey, this is where that Care Clinic app could be really useful, right? You could track those thoughts, get reminders to challenge them.
Exactly. It's about giving yourself the tools you need to manage those distortions so you can create a better reality, a happier one.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. It's wild when you think about it, how much our thoughts really do affect everything, every single part of our lives.
It's true. But the good news is we don't have to let those thoughts control us. We can change them. It takes time and it takes work, but it is possible.
We've got tools, we've got support, and most importantly, we've got the power to learn and grow. And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought.
Yeah.
What action will you take today to challenge a distorted thought? Remember, even a small step can make a big difference. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those thoughts in check.